Good morning, Nebraska fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson of HuskerBigRed.com. Joining me, as always, is Danny Gillette of thegreatcornholio.org. And Danny, it's Monday. We're done with the bye week. We got Nebraska football coming back up. How you doing today?
Good. I'm excited to have some football this coming Saturday, and you know, I like bye weeks for the players because it gives them a chance to reset, and the coaches a chance to reset. But boy, as a fan, it is kind of rough. I did watch a lot of football stress free on Saturday though, so I mean there was that. But I'm excited for Nebraska to get back on the field now with a couple of weeks to fully prepare.
Yeah, it'll be good to see Nebraska over the weekend, although there was some Nebraska-related like football things happening, as everybody probably knows, with the Adrian Martinez thing that's kind of been trending on Nebraska Twitter after, just interesting that the Huskers lost to the Sooners 49-14. And then the very next week, our old quarterback, Adrian Martinez, has a huge game against Oklahoma and leads Kansas State to, the kind of upset and the kind of win that, he just it wasn't ever able to deliver at Nebraska. So it's like everybody has been now kind of talking about, is Nebraska cursed? And it's kind of interesting because it's like, are they cursed because they couldn't get anything done? And then now, as soon as Adrian Martinez leaves, is that why he started playing well? I mean, he did struggle in a loss to Tulane last week, but I don't know, man. Do you believe in the Nebraska curse, or do you just think that Scott Frost was like a really bad coach?
Scott Frost was a really bad coach. I mean, for all the knocks that I give on Adrian Martinez, and I will continue to knock him, he was asked to do a lot. He was asked to do a lot over the course of a game with a pretty bad O line throughout his tenure here. And even when you look at film from his first year compared to his last year at Nebraska, they definitely did not do him any favors. Mario Verduzco was an absolute joke. He didn't develop Adrian Martinez, and if he did work with him, he got Martinez confused between should I be a running quarterback and should I be a pocket passer. And there comes a certain point where you just can see mental blocks. You can see it with kickers in the form of missing field goals, and with quarterbacks you can see it in terms of you know taking long looks at reads, missed progressions, just overall poor play. And while the line didn't help, I truly believe that Mario Verduzco messed him up. And I think it was just a poor what do I want to call it, combination of Scott Frost relying on him too much, and then his coaching staff not helping Martinez behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it was frustrating because Adrian Martinez would play so well at times, and he did have some great games, at Nebraska. I mean, there's no question about that, but it seems like he really struggled, in those big moments, and that's those close games. The record in close games was horrible with Martinez at quarterback and under Scott Frost, and we've all seen it time and time again. So I think that was like the frustrating thing for me, I guess, and a lot of Nebraska fans was, that why couldn't Adrian Martinez deliver this kind of performance or this kind of drive, against Iowa or Wisconsin in one of those games where Nebraska really needed it. And then, that could have maybe gave Nebraska the momentum to kind of get things turned around. And so I'm happy for him. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm happy that he, things finally kind of worked out and it went well for him. But, it still was like a little bitter, kind of left me with a bittersweet taste, I guess, to see, him do that, especially against Oklahoma, 1 week after, after Nebraska just totally lays an egg. But I mean, that's life, but it's life as a Nebraska fan right now, I guess.
Yeah, and it just speaks to the poor development with talent. And that to me goes back to the misses on recruiting, and it all kind of lumps to me into one big thing of just not managing personnel correctly. And Martinez was an example of that. Wando Robinson was an example of that. And, it's just Nebraska under Scott Frost just couldn't either develop talent or retain talent. It was always, you know, I'm not going to say miracles, but, it was kind of a relief when they did work out because there were more hits or more misses than hits.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's, definitely true kind of going up the recruiting. That's why I think it's important, to get people who can evaluate talent and players, and that I mean, when you look at recruiting, I mean, you're looking at 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids. So there is going to be, some projection being made there. And, and you have to get the right mix of people too, and the right culture. And Nebraska just it's never seemed like this entire program's kind of been moving in the right direction, cohesive, under Scott Frost. It was always just kind of, mismanaged, I guess is a pretty good way to say it. But it's like, I don't know, man. I do sort of believe that, like the firing of Frank Solich, the firing of Bo Pelini, like maybe there is the curse of Frank Solich. And, like it just makes you think, like, if Scott Frost had not come to Nebraska, could he find success somewhere else? Will he go and find success somewhere else after this? Is it all, the curse?
100%. 100% he'll find success because he won't have that pressure of coaching for Nebraska. And you can all make the excuse that, oh, he's earned 15 million, what pressure is there, blah blah blah. But it's a lot of pressure, and he won't have to be under that microscope anymore. Same thing with Adrian Martinez. He won't have the pressure of Frost or playing for Nebraska, and look at what he's doing right now. Granted, it helps when he has a good running game and a good offensive line, but he is succeeding, so there is that.
Yeah, I mean, Deuce Vaughn is, he's one of the best running backs in the country. Not that he had a huge game against Oklahoma, but yeah, the defense is better, and just, kind of a better coaching staff. But, Kansas State did lose to Tulane last week, and the head coach was just criticizing. So it's not like Adrian Martinez has gone there and just been like dynamic from day one, but they are asking him to do a lot less. And that is something that I do think helps, because Nebraska, he just couldn't carry the burden that they asked him to.
And it's easy to be a prisoner of the moment with this Oklahoma game. Let's see how the rest of the season plays out. But Oklahoma was a good win, and I'm not taking that away from him.
That's where everybody's saying the curse, the curse of Scott Frost. Northwestern's lost 3 in a row since they beat Nebraska. Georgia Southern lost to UAB. Oklahoma's now lost, so everything that, comes in touch with, I guess Scott Frost wasn't around for the Oklahoma game, so maybe that logic doesn't work, but his remnants
Oh
is
no,
still
he
there.
was around. He was around. There was this big mess last weekend, and he had his fingerprints all over that, and he put his staff in a tough spot. So he was definitely around for the Oklahoma game, 100%.
But yeah, it's I don't know. It was kind of hard to watch, I guess, Adrian Martinez. But I also watched Dave Aranda and Matt Campbell on Saturday. As Baylor took on Iowa State, Baylor came away with the win, and I think it's really, I can kind of feel like people coalescing around the idea of Dave Aranda being the head coach. There's been a lot of rumors. I even saw something on Facebook, one of the Facebook groups, that, Dave Aranda was going to agree to some deal, or already had. I don't believe that, at all. He's still got an entire season to coach, but maybe some sort of back channel thing, was happening. But I do think that Dave Aranda is getting a lot of momentum, and seems like he's kind of the number one target. But it does concern me a little bit, because like Feldman didn't even mention him when he did that reporting stuff too. But it's hard to, interview for another job while you still have a job. So maybe that's part of it.
To me, I would pay more attention to what the local guys or guys with Nebraska ties say than a guy like Feldman, because a lot of times these national analysts, they'll take the hot story, for example, Nebraska, and they'll try to add as much as they can to it. The problem is they don't really understand, what is going on, or they don't have strong enough connections to where, you would feel comfortable saying, okay, like this is a good list, or, these are good candidates. So I wouldn't put too much stock into Feldman's report. He's obviously going to try to not use this to get clicks, but he won't have as, in depth of a view on this, in my opinion. And truthfully, I feel like the writers here back in Nebraska and on Nebraska Twitter would probably have a better grasp of what's going on. And I'll just add this really quickly. Just because Dave Aranda hasn't been mentioned doesn't mean he's not being talked to. A lot of times, schools will, be connected to certain names. Well, they're talking to a coach that is not even in the realm of the public radar.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I do think with some, I think you have to look at, all the different reporting, but one thing that's interesting with Feldman is he does seem to sort of have, his pulse on Nebraska. I mean, he's got like his last podcast, he got copies of Mickey Joseph practice plans, and like he could read line for line what he was telling his assistant coaches because Mickey Joseph had to write on there, his practice schedule started with be in the office at a certain time because apparently under Scott Frost, people just showed up, whenever there was no organized structure. So
Makes sense.
I think it does depend, on who those guys have. I just haven't, I haven't seen much reporting from, like Husker Online had a hot board last night, and it basically there was no reporting in it at all. It was just him saying, it was just the guy going through pros and cons of each guy. It's like, well, any person could do that. You basically gave no information whatsoever. But yeah, but I mean, I do agree with you. I trust Callahan and like Sip. Those are the guys I would look to the most, during this coaching search. And Christopherson, I think, at 24/7.
Yeah.
Those are the three guys that I follow and that I trust more than anybody. For sure, I definitely trust local reporting more than the national guys. But Feldman, I think, is pretty solid, and Pete Thamel's the other guy. Tend to, he doesn't throw out a ton of crap. He's usually pretty accurate. But you're right in terms of they don't have all the same sources, but it depends, because you don't know who they're talking to, and a lot of times the stuff comes from agents too, and that might be somewhere where a guy like Feldman might have better sources than like Sean Callahan. But yeah, it's definitely up in the air. I do think that Dave Aranda makes a lot of sense though. And the name that keeps getting thrown out though from both a local and a national perspective that I just hate is Bill O'Brien, and apparently Trev's got connections to him. I forget why, but I don't love that fit at all. And we've talked about that, but that's the name that worries me the most is Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, I worry that they're going to settle for Bill O'Brien, and I don't like Bill O'Brien at all. And like you said, we've talked about it, but this is also still early in the head coaching search process. It's September 26th. I mean, we'll see what happens between now and let's just even say the end of October. There could be other names emerging, other firings, other good fits for Nebraska. But, I feel like we have a solid base of candidates here, and we've heard the same names kind of pop up week after week. So, I'll be interested to see how much traction Dave Aranda gets because I do think he's a good fit. Bill O'Brien, I mean, you might as well just have me coach, and that would probably be the same amount of effectiveness in my opinion. Because at least I wouldn't leave after 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, I mean, people are talking. I mean, he did do a good job with the Penn State thing. I mean, I'm not saying he took over a tough situation and he did a good job there, but he already had he had Christian Hackenberg, who was a pretty solid quarterback, and he didn't. I just don't trust him on the recruiting trail, and he's not a dynamic person to me. Whereas I think Dave Aranda really would be, and I'm not saying you necessarily don't need to have a dynamic person, but I just think that's going to be the guy who can get the most out of this Nebraska job. I just feel like Bill O'Brien is, going to be. I mean, I feel like the ceiling is a lot lower than it would be now. I think the floor would be higher. I think he would make it so you're not having, you're not going to have this like dumb systems. You're not going to have, the schemes and stuff are going to be good. And I think he would be a consistent winner, but I don't think he would stay here for a long time. I think he wants to go back to the NFL, and I don't think he would be effective enough to be like secure here long term.
And you look at like some of the names he's been able to call plays for in his coaching career. You had, Tom Brady in the pros. You had Christian Hackenberg. You have the Alabama offense now. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a good coach, but it also helps when you have a lot of tools in the tool chest, so to speak. I mean, coaching at Alabama, it can make your life a little bit easier if you're a coordinator.
Yeah, it definitely can, and it makes recruiting a lot easier. When you win all the time, when you're in the playoff, when you send everybody to the NFL, that really helps for recruiting wise. I mean, Nebraska does have a lot of things to sell, I think, on the recruiting trail, but it's like where So you think about like Bill Callahan, where is he going to help you on the recruiting trail? I mean, Dave Aranda has coached in Texas. He, has coached in the Big Ten. He's from California, so he's got ties to California, which is a place Nebraska needs to recruit, Texas, which is a place Nebraska needs to recruit, and he knows the Big Ten. So it's like you can see how he would try to build a staff, and plus I think he's got guys on Nebraska's staff now that would probably stick, at least Mickey. And O'Brien, I just like what's he going to do? Alabama recruits on a national level. They basically are only recruiting, outside of like positional need when they really need a player at a position. They're barely ever recruiting outside the top 100. So it's like a different realm of player. And I just don't see how that strategy is going to apply to Nebraska. You know what I mean?
I remember watching this video one time. It was a recruit's visit with Nick Saban, and the
Yeah.
visit entailed a ride on his private boat at his lake, um, a walk around, his yard, which is absolutely massive, and then that's all well and good, that's all well and good, but then he opens the door to his like trophy case of his house, and there's just rings everywhere. Rings, trophies. Like Nick Saban doesn't even have to say a word. He just has to open that room or open that section of his house, and boom, that's his recruiting pitch. So I can imagine it would make things a little bit easy for Bill O'Brien as they get the top wide receiver, the top running back, yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, Nebraska doesn't have that yet.
Yeah, and I don't think Nebraska is ever, going to have that. So that's why I think you really need a coach that can develop talent and that isn't going to have to rely on, top 10 recruiting classes, because I don't think that that's ever going to happen at Nebraska under the current, the way things are working. If you do get to the 12-team playoff and Nebraska starts making it, that's going to help. But it's not like Scott Frost, at least according to the rankings, had poor recruits. I mean, he had top 25 classes every single year until 2022. So that there's that part of it where you have to be able to recruit those kids, but then you also have to develop them and, find a use for them. And Nebraska, like if you can't find a way to use Wandale Robinson right, there's something wrong with you as a coach. So, I mean, I think that was a big flashing red sign right there.
And to me, you have to focus on not just kids, but areas. Texas, California, even a little bit of Florida. I mean, I know we've had bad luck with Florida over the past couple of years, but I still think it's worth, trying. Georgia, I think, might be a better fit, especially for Mickey Joseph. And so I think instead of just like getting kids, you have to focus on certain areas where you can have success and build from there. Like, I don't even think right now the state of Nebraska is a guaranteed success for the program in recruiting, but we've managed to land some kids in the 2023 class. How many will stay? We don't know. But right now, I mean, aside from Cameron Lenhart, we haven't really seen too many kids decommit yet, which I'm a little encouraged and surprised by.
Yeah, I think mostly it's because, Mickey Joseph's still around and he's, recruited a lot of them. And then beyond that, there's a few guys, but Nebraska just doesn't have that many high ranking guys, so it's kind of, I think the more as we go along, as other schools miss on some of their targets, if other schools miss on defensive line targets, and they've been recruited like Riley Van Poppel, then they're going to come over there and hit, so I think it's more like a need by need basis, and a lot of Nebraska guys are 3-star players. If they had like top 100 guys, I think it'd be a little bit different. But we'll see. I think one thing Nebraska, you're right, they do need to get into other, Texas, Florida. I mean, Nebraska has to be a national recruiting program, and I think that they can be. But, one area that's kind of under recruited nationally where Nebraska, I think, could have some major inroads is like the St. Louis area, Missouri. They're starting to get better players in there. But Nebraska just really, outside of the state of Nebraska, there's not a ton of like Midwestern recruiting presence. They did get Fedoni a couple of years ago, but there are prospects in the Midwest. Nebraska just needs to start doing a better job of getting them, and winning is the thing that's going to help the most.
The Midwest and also the New Jersey, Maryland area too. I think, I think they need to start recruiting there as well. I believe one of the transfer linemen that we got was from the New Jersey area. I want to say, was it Kevin Williams? I can't remember off the top of my head, but um, they got Ramir Johnson from New Jersey, and they got one other player from New Jersey. So I feel like New Jersey and Maryland also need to be areas that should be explored, because that's an area where a lot of Big Ten teams, really don't go too often. And I think there's some diamonds in the rough there.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of talent. That's the DMV. Is what they call it. Richmond, Baltimore, Maryland. That area. So yeah, Nebraska's. Yeah, they got Jaden Gould in the last class out of New Jersey. He's someone that I think could potentially still play this season, because Nebraska's cornerback room is just absolutely horrible right now. So we'll see how that works out. But I think it comes back to you just have to find, getting the right hire, and hopefully, I don't know, man, hopefully the next coach can break the curse. I do feel like Nebraska has been a little bit, cursed. Not that I believe in the curses or anything, but it's just there's been so much bad luck for this program. I mean, it's like 18 losses or 19 losses in a row now against ranked teams, and all the close losses, and just it's like everything. It's like that video, where somebody showed like a Nebraska fan getting ready for the game, and it was just the guy getting hit in the nuts over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's what Saturday felt like, and it's it's been a bunch of those.
Hopefully they can build some momentum. Starting this week against Indiana. I mean, I don't really have tremendously high hopes, but I do hope that we can at least put on a good game, and that there's some progress being shown. Because as much as it doesn't feel like it, we can still make a bowl game. And so I think, we have to kind of go in with that mindset of we basically have to win out. And it's going to be a tough slate. But, maybe this bye week will be what the team and program needed to kind of really reset things and get back to winning.
Yeah, definitely. It'll be interesting to see, news coming out of the bye week. I'm interested to see if there's like any personnel adjustments, especially like on the offensive line. I mean, I don't know if you can trot Bryce Benhart back out there at right tackle. He was so bad. I mean, he was so bad against Oklahoma. He could barely get out of his stance at times. So there's got to be somebody else. I feel the same way about Corcoran at left tackle. I mean, play him at guard. He was at least okay at guard, but the second they moved him out to tackle to replace Teddy, he should never play tackle again ever.
I don't understand that either. It's like the scene in Space Jam where the Monstars steal like Sean Bradley and Charles Barkley's powers to try to defeat the Toon Squad. I mean, they just look like they had their powers zapped. I mean, this offensive line, and these were all highly rated recruits. It just boggles my mind. It really boggles my mind.
Yeah, it's offensive line really is about development. I'd like to see, Leftoski more. Williams, I'd like to see him a little bit more. I'm trying to think Hunter Spencer, Hunter Anthony or whatever, the guy they had from transferred from Oklahoma State.
Yep, Hunter Anthony.
Play somebody else. My God, don't put Benhart out there again. I mean, the way that Benhart just, it was unbelievable to me how slow he was getting out of his stance against Oklahoma. Like they were like level with him by the time he even got out of his stance. It's like, that's probably why they took Casey Martz. They're like, yeah, we need Chuba to play a little bit, but they're like, really, Casey, you're going to die if you play 10 more snaps in front of Bryce Benhart.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, like, if I was, the Mark Whipple, I would play out of shotgun from now on. I would go solely out of shotgun from now on, unless I really needed to run the football, because that's the only way you're going to be able to protect your quarterback right now. And, it's just like, I don't understand why, Hunter Anthony and, some of the others haven't been given a chance yet, because at this point, like, you're just looking to stop the bleeding.
Well, at least they've got some experience playing Oklahoma State. Williams is from Northern Colorado, I believe. So, I mean, they've at least got some position. I mean, it's like Corcoran. I mean, Benhart, I get it. He's been playing there, and he hasn't looked as bad as like the Oklahoma game, but we'll see what happens. I mean, Indiana's not a great pass rushing team. They've got 10 sacks through their first 4 games. They're 3-1. They beat Illinois, which was kind of their their solid win. They lost to Cincinnati over the weekend, 38-24. So their defense is not that great, really. They are the worst in the Big Ten in that pass efficiency. We're close to right there with them, but Nebraska gives up more yards. We give up, I believe, more points. But the thing I think too, looking at Indiana, where it seems like they might be a favorable matchup for Nebraska, is they're averaging like 3.4 yards per rushing attempt. We all know Nebraska's not great at run defense. They're the only Big Ten team right now that's allowing over 5 yards a carry. Nebraska's giving up like 5.7 yards a carry. So there are some concerns. Indiana's got Connor Bazelak. He transferred from Missouri last year, but he's thrown quite a few interceptions. Not that Nebraska's been able to intercept the ball at all this year, but I don't know how much you've kind of looked at Indiana. Nebraska coming in has been labeled a 3.5-point favorite. Not that has helped us at all before. We are 1-2 this year as the favorite. So, you can kind of throw the spread out the window, but I kind of buy that in that, it seems like this matchup is pretty even. If you gave Nebraska the Indiana schedule, I mean, Nebraska probably would be 3-1 right now too, maybe not, but with the loss of Georgia Southern. But what are your kind of first impressions of the matchup against Indiana?
When I looked at, their schedule and, the scores so far, I came away that, they, like you guys said, they have a defense that can allow points. And, I think it's going to be important for Nebraska to get off to a fast start offensively, because I'm still not comfortable with this defense right now. And, Bazelak, 7 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, over 1,000 yards. And, they really, I want to say they don't have a go-to running back per se, but they have 2 in Sean Shivers and Josh Henderson that have 320 and 159 yards, respectively, and average 4.6 and 4.4 yards a carry. The big, kind of X factor, at least to me initially, is their wide receiver, Cam Camper. He has 418 receiving yards on 33 receptions and averages a little over 12 yards per reception, 12.7 yards. And so he, to me, is their big kind of X factor offensively. I mean, it doesn't look like they do anything overly impressive, but it looks like they're solid on the offensive side of the football in several areas. And I mean, I think it's going to be a challenge more so for the secondary than it is for the run defense, but that's not to say that their running backs are bad by any stretch of the imagination. I just kind of worry about Camper heading into this coming Saturday.
Yeah, they throw the ball. I think they're throwing the ball 50 times a game. Still only averaging like 26. So they're completing less than 60% of the passes, which isn't, great in terms of efficiency. But yeah, Tom Allen's kind of always been, a pass happy kind of coach. That's just kind of the way that their system's been. I think they know that they're Indiana and they can't just like line up and run the football at people that win. But Shivers is pretty good, and the run defense is going to be tested. The defensive tackles, they're going to have to play better. And I think that's one thing defensively. It would be, like Oklahoma was just not that they even needed to worry about third downs, but most of the time this year it's been, the first down defense hasn't been very good. You know what I mean? Like you're giving up, it's hard to give up 4, 5, 6 yards every time you get a first down or a completion. I mean, we saw that with Eric Shenander so many times, guys playing off so much. You're giving up yardage on first down. It makes it hard to get off the field. You have to win on first down, keep ahead of the down and distance. And so I'm going to be interested to see what, Bill Busch does this week. I think that's one of the biggest questions. I think a huge indictment of, Eric Shenander came from Urban Meyer, strangely enough, in that he was talking about the Nebraska schemes and how they basically don't disguise anything. And there's no disguising in coverage and blitzes and everything. And so you can't do that stuff anymore. Like this isn't like, even though college football is not the NFL, like if you want to play high level defense, especially against like a team like Oklahoma, you've got to be disguising your coverages because these guys have seen everything. So it's like, I mean, football is just so much different now when guys are playing 7 on. I mean, like Dylan Gabriel's been throwing passes since he was in 7th grade. He's seen every coverage and blitz. You got to mix it up. You got to get him thinking about it. If the defense can sit there, basically, like what Urban Meyer was saying is that if the offense can look at your defense with 10 or 15 seconds and know what you're going to do, they're going to beat you unless you're just that much better, talent wise. They're going to beat you almost every time. And that's where Nebraska was with Shenander.
Oh yeah, and it was about lining up personnel correctly in terms of positional fit. Like for example, I know we talked about this ad nauseum, but having so many linebackers out on the field, and I'm going to be interested to see if there are any, like you said, any wrinkles to this Nebraska defense. Like I said, to me, making sure that they contain Camper is one of the biggest things in my opinion. He had a 156-yard game against Illinois in their season opener, and then last weekend he had 126 yards. So he is a big play threat, and to me, I think one of the biggest things is going to be pass rush and not giving the quarterback time to throw. And I feel like that's one of my keys every week. But it's just been against good offenses and some not so good offenses. I just see the secondary and the defensive line getting sliced and diced, whether it be running with the quarterback and can't get enough pressure on the pass rush, or wide receivers just being wide open, and that can't happen again.
Yeah, there's been, outside of O'Shawn Mathis, there really hasn't been anybody that's consistently winning one-on-one battles, up front. Garrett Nelson has really struggled this year. I don't know if it's because teams are, paying more attention to him, but, he's done okay in the run game. I mean, he's made, a few plays here or there, but, he's really struggled. Caleb Tanner hasn't done anything. And then they just, I'd like to see Blaine Gunnarsson or, put somebody out there, to do something. But another issue is there's just no interior pass rush. I mean, Ty Robinson hasn't done anything this year. And, Devin Drew had a sack last week, but that was after the quarterback held the ball for like 6 seconds. So it's not really what I would call like effective interior pressure. They need somebody to be pushing the pocket. Hopefully Devin Drew can start doing that. But, if some of these guys aren't producing, like you've got to turn, put some of these younger guys out there. I mean, maybe they're just really not ready, but just sticking with the same old, walk on, try hard types that aren't being productive just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. At the same time, though, it is going to be hard for Bill Busch. There's only so many adjustments that you can make, and try to stick with whatever the scheme is. I think the biggest thing is these guys have got to start tackling, and even with Shenander, they were disguising looks, but you constantly had guys who weren't lined up right. So, I just think getting people in the right spots and kind of going back to that almost a high school level of just simplifying things will help a lot. Indiana's not a team that's more talented than Nebraska. That's one thing I can say with confidence. Nebraska's the more talented team. Nebraska should win this game, but we all know the coaching aspect of it. That's the big question. We still have questions about Mickey Joseph. I still have a lot of questions about him as a head coach, as a position coach, as a recruiter. Yes, but as a head coach, his first performance was not good. And I know people, are saying the 5 days or whatever, but okay, he shouldn't have needed any time to sit there and look at, I shouldn't be running no huddle against Oklahoma. Like there's basic things he should have done. And we'll see if that happens this week, but I still have a lot of concerns about him as a head coach.
Yeah, sure. I know that like you and I kind of disagreed about that on Twitter, but I think your concerns are warranted for sure. Just because if he is competing or auditioning for a head coaching job, then he needs to, I think, really win this game on Saturday. This is as much of an audition tape and a chance to show what he can do as it is with the goal to get Nebraska wins. But I'll be interested to see if he what adjustments he's made during the bye week. If he has a more up tempo offensive plan or slower offensive plan rather, and if he can get some sort of cohesion on offense, because we saw against Oklahoma there was that very first play where they took the ball down the field, threw the deep ball, touchdown, and then after that it was completely stifled. And granted, the Oklahoma defense was very good, but this isn't the first time that we've seen offensive power outages, so to speak. And I'd like to see the offense be able to play a complete game and not just score 21 points in the first half and then go silent in the second half and, kind of finish the job all the way through because this is a talented offense, but it seems like they just haven't been able to put everything together for the entirety of the game.
Yeah, I think one thing, it was just hard to when you bring in a new offensive coordinator, there's going to be an adjustment time. And I think that is, kind of overlooked a little bit with, Mark Whipple coming in here. But yeah, and I do think that Mickey Joseph can improve. I'm not saying that he's not going to be a better in-game coach or whatever, but I guess my example for that, if you there's the Lions and the Vikings game yesterday, and Detroit was up by 3 and they had a 4th and 1 at like the Vikings 20 something. Matt Campbell, not Matt Campbell, sorry, Dan Campbell. I got Campbell on the brain, but he decided to kick a field goal, and I don't know if they missed it. Either way, the Vikings went down and won the game. Whereas if the Lions just would have went for it on 4th and 1 and got it, it would have been game over. And afterwards, he sat there in the press conference and said, "I hate this call. I hate that I went for the field goal." And it's like, okay, it's one thing to have it after the fact, but at some point, if you're going to be a successful head coach, you need to make the right calls beforehand. Like saying afterwards that you messed up and that I should have done this, like that doesn't do any good if you're doing that at the press conference every week. You need to have the foresight to know. That's what great coaches have. And so I didn't see that from Mickey Joseph the first game. That doesn't mean he can't get better from, this one. And we'll see. I think he's got a lot of the right ideas. I think the kids want to play for him. But at the same time, I saw a lot of guys that didn't seem like they were giving maximum effort. Maybe they were just 100% gassed against Oklahoma, but I didn't see a team that was like fighting and scratching and clawing. You know what I mean? I really felt like a team that was like, we're getting our asses whipped again.
I can see both of that. I mean, there were some elements where, they really looked like they just kind of went through the motions, but the defense was also on the field a ton.
Yeah.
And so it could be a mix of both, I think. And I think that's what it is. But we'll see what they do against Indiana. I think this game will tell a lot for many areas of this team. I mean, if they win, they get a win under their belt, try to go for a win streak against Rutgers next week. And, maybe things are looking up by the time we get to the heavier part of the schedule.
I'm laughing because the thing is if Nebraska goes and wins this game, say they win by 14, they just come out and play really well. For a fact that people are going to be like, we can still win the Big Ten West, which I know is mathematically possible. I think Minnesota might be Iowa and Minnesota are undefeated right now, but
Minnesota looks really good.
They look really good, and Michigan State looks really bad. So maybe, I don't know, maybe the transfer portal thing isn't the best idea. I don't know.
I mean, I think giving Mel Tucker that major contract was a stupid idea. He had a good year last year, but I would have waited. It's the same thing that ultimately, Moose did with Scott Frost, and I understand that, that's what the going rate was at the time. But I mean, and I think the transfer portal can work. I just think, Mel Tucker, when you can ride Kenneth Walker all season like you did last year, why wouldn't you? That makes the team look really good. But now there's just struggling really bad this year.
I think it just shows that you have to recruit well in high school, and I think you just have to recruit well at every possible way. Nebraska has to do it through JUCOs, but the transfer portal, and then high school recruiting. I think you got to do it all. And that's the thing is Nebraska. I get people who are they're saying Nebraska's not that great of a job, but I'm not saying it's a top 10 job in college football, but I think it's a top 20 job. I mean, it's a place where you can have a top 25 program every year. I mean, you really can in terms of the recruiting and everything that goes into it, as long as you just have a coach that can figure it out. So, I mean, I just feel like there's resources at Nebraska to be successful at play. I feel like there's more built-in opportunities to be successful at Nebraska than there are at Iowa State or Baylor or Kansas, for instance. So I understand why maybe some of those coaches wouldn't want to leave, but I still think Nebraska's got a lot of things going for it in terms of trying to find its next head coach.
I just wonder if the people in charge will make the proper decisions to find the next head coach. I just hope they don't settle, and I've said it before. I hope they don't settle or try to take the easiest route, because now this is a decision that will affect Trev Albert's tenure as athletic director at Nebraska, good or bad. So he's got to be very careful about who he hires next. And, maybe some more candidates will emerge down the road. I mean, like I said earlier, we still got a ton of season, and maybe the list will change.
So who's your top three right now? If you were Trev Alberts, and you were just putting who's on your top three list right now?
Ooh, okay. Dave Aranda's number one. Okay. Lance Leopold is number two.
Okay.
And honestly, very bottom, but number three, Urban Meyer.
Okay.
But I don't think he's coming. I don't think I've basically tossed the Urban Meyer thing out the window, and not because I don't want him, but I just don't think he's coming.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's any interest. He's such a he is a snake oil salesman, though, so it wouldn't shock me at all. It wouldn't shock me at all if he sat there and said, "Oh, I'm not coming," and then all of a sudden he's at the press conference. I feel like it would be one of those kind of deals where there wouldn't be that much report. It would just be out. It would just be all of a sudden, bam, he's out. But I don't think that's gonna happen. But
see, the thing that intrigues me about Leopold is the speed of his offense. If you watch the Kansas game on Saturday, that offense was flying. That offense was absolutely flying. And, you kind of need, an explosive offense, not a stagnant one. And Leopold's been able to do that at Kansas so far this year. I understand previous seasons, but, he's really doing a nice job of getting the most that he can out of this Kansas offense. And, again, I go back to, his success at Division III. Yes, it's Division III, but a lot of times, you have, your quarterback working two jobs, or your running back, trying to make ends meet. And Division III is for the kids that love the game. And it's really hard to develop success there. And that's what he was able to do. So that's why Leopold is my number one. Aranda, we kind of spoke about. And then Urban Meyer, I think, is a long shot. And, I'm not going to say he goes against my morals, because my morals are very low to begin with. But but I'm kind of uneasy about the fit. I just see him as somebody that would leave after 2 years and not kind of, be here to see this whole program rebuilt.
Yeah, it's like I said. I mean, I think he would be a good fit. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I think he'd win. I don't know if he'd be a good fit, but I do think he'd win. But yeah,
I just want
agree.
Stability. You know what I mean? Stability. Like this there's nothing this program needs more right now than stability. And I don't know if he would be the guy to deliver it. He could deliver fast success, which is good. But, this program needs, like we said before, 5 coaches in 20 years. Right now we need, some form of stability to really kind of put this program on a good track, so that, say, if, the next coach, came in, he would be able to take over a program without it being in shambles. Like that's what they did at Baylor, I think. Baylor had a pretty solid base, and now, Dave Aranda has been able to really kind of work with it. And, it shouldn't be an all or nothing rebuild after a coach leaves. There should be some pieces there. And I think we need, for this program, years and years of stability, because I know you talked about, Chris, the recruiting is, kind of poor right now. There's not a lot in the cupboard right now. So we need a coach, in my opinion, that will be here for the, long haul, so to speak. And I understand in college sports, a long haul is not what it used to be anymore, but still.
Yeah, I think I would be. I like Aranda. I really like Leopold. I kind of go back and forth between those two guys as my top two.
Yeah.
I just feel like Aranda, maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say, when a guy's ready to leave his job or not. Leopold, he's been at Kansas 2 years, but he does have that Nebraska tie where he worked for Frank Solich. So maybe bringing back a former Frank Solich assistant would end the curse, because Nebraska has been cursed a little bit. I mean, there's something going on, man. Like the lack of success we've had is just, there's no natural explanation for it. It's a curse.
Leopold has 3 wins at a basketball school and has more wins than Nebraska does right now. And
he's got 4 now, because he's 4-0.
Oh yeah, 4. That's right, 4. And so, yeah, you're looking, that's more games than Nebraska's won. And let's see, last year they won 3. This year they've only won 1. So it's like a year and a half so far. So, I mean, not that the bar is set high for him, but I really liked what I saw. His offense was fast paced. He got his team to play hard. He gets the most out of the players that he has on the field, and that's something that I find really respectable in a head coach because, we're seeing it now. You can have all the talent in the world, or at least a good amount of talent, and it just doesn't measure up. I love the coaches that are able to take, the 3 stars and make them into something special, and I think that's a coach we need moving forward.
So we have Sean G is back. He says, I've seen a lot of people who say Urban Meyer won't come to Lincoln because Shelley Meyer won't live there. Happy wife, happy life. I mean, I've said not this about Shelley, but people said, like, people threw out Deion Sanders' name, and I see no scenario where Deion Sanders wants to live in Nebraska.
Deion Sanders has it made right now. Deion Sanders has it made.
I can see him going for like, if Auburn comes open, that to me, if I was Auburn, he would be my number 1 candidate. I would throw everything I had at Deion Sanders if I was Auburn. If I was Georgia Tech, I would do the same thing. Basically, any program in the ACC or SEC that has an opening, like, I would make a run at him. But I don't think he's coming to Lincoln, Nebraska. He doesn't seem like a guy that wants to spend his months around corn and in the cold. So, that stuff does play a factor.
Any Southern job, I think he would be game for. Any job that involves cold, like up here in Massachusetts, absolutely no chance whatsoever. In Nebraska, probably no chance whatsoever. But I do think it's interesting what Sean brings up. I mean, it could be a playing factor. You never know. You see what's going on with Tom Brady right now. So there's definitely familial elements that go into certain aspects of football careers, and happy wife, happy life. I can definitely understand that as well.
So Sean also says, love the channel, by the way. I watch every chance I get, and we'll use that as a plug to make sure if you guys are watching or checking out our content to, like, comment, and make sure that you subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. But thanks for watching, Sean. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean. We just kind of babble up here with no real plan, and we appreciate that someone actually likes watching us talk. And so, yeah, I think we're 4 away from 100 subscribers, so that's big too. I remember a couple weeks ago we were at like 57, and
yeah,
we've really grown. So thank you guys. We really appreciate it.
And we still are putting out stuff on the podcast too, so make sure if you're listening or watching, there's kind of a little talk on Nebraska Twitter about that. I like to watch the podcast sometimes. Sometimes I like to listen, so it just kind of depends how it goes. But yeah, it's been fun to interact with everybody, and we're going to be on this long process, man, with this coaching search, because like we've been saying, it's not going to be over anytime soon. At least I don't think. I would be really surprised if. I think Trev is going to get one of these head coaches. Like, I'm just trying to will it to not be Bill O'Brien, because I really don't want him. But
I know we disagree on a lot, but I think that's one thing we can agree on.
Yeah, we can. I think our lists, I think our lists are pretty similar. I've got Aranda. I'm still juggling with my third one, which I guess would be Matt Campbell, but I don't know. I'm starting to get a little more, just not feeling Matt Campbell quite as much. But
can I ask why? Because he was pretty high on your list for a couple weeks.
I don't know. It's just, they don't. It's just, that's the thing, is it's really no reason for it. It's just that I like Dave Aranda better, and I really like Lance Leipold. So I don't think it's necessarily anything wrong with Matt Campbell. I do think he would do a good job, and I do think that the thing I guess that worries me is I've seen some of the stats of, like, he hasn't sent a ton of guys to the NFL, and that they've lost a lot of games, where they've been, like, favored or against the spread or whatever, which I don't think that makes that big of a difference. But like, and so it is, last year I think they underperformed a little bit, and we'll see what happens this year. They're 3-1 so far. They played pretty well against Baylor though. But the one thing I do like about Matt Campbell is that I think if he came to Nebraska, I don't think he would leave for a long time, unless he got fired. I think he would be here for the long haul. I think he would build the right culture, and I think he would recruit in a way that would set up Nebraska for success long term. I think worry about him is similar with O'Brien. I just don't know if he's ever going to get you past like 9 wins, or if he's ever going to do more than say like win the Big Ten West, which I do think would be obviously sweet. We haven't won the Big Ten West. I think when we won the division, it was like the legends or the leaders, whatever stupid crap the Big Ten had then. So we haven't won the Big Ten. We haven't really even made a run at the Big Ten West since we've been there. So, but, and then beyond him, there's not a whole lot of names. One name I think that's interesting, I was thinking about this for Georgia Tech, but Dan Mullen, that game that doesn't get mentioned a lot, but he's coached 13 seasons in the SEC, and he's coached teams to 11 bowl games. He coached Mississippi State to 9 straight bowl games. So it's like, I don't know why he's not getting mentioned, not necessarily for the Nebraska job, but he's just a name I think that should be out there for, if you've won for over a decade in the SEC, it seems like that would be someone you might think about.
I know Florida fans were sick of him towards the end, so I don't know. I think he does have that list of achievements, and he's being brought up. I just saw an article for Georgia Tech for the Georgia Tech position, but I think also, he does have a record of success, but does he necessarily move the needle like some of the other names? I'm not so sure about that. He did lead Florida to the Cotton Bowl in 2020 with an 8-4 record. He finished 5-6, last year. So maybe it's just too soon. Maybe if this was, looking for a 2024 coach or 2023 coach, maybe his name would be brought up a little bit more. But I do think there are a lot of strong candidates for this Nebraska job, and I think that's probably why his name hasn't been brought up.
Yeah, that's true. I think you're right. Thinking the other name. So here's who I would put on my third list, who actually would probably be like, if I had my true choice, if they were like within reason, I could hire anybody that I wanted. I would hire Mark Stoops. He would be in my top 3. I just don't know that he's going to come to Nebraska. But the one thing about it is like, you have to, he's done a good job at Kentucky in that he's turned that program around. And he's done a great job there, but football's always going to be second at Kentucky. Football will never be equal to basketball in Kentucky.
Same thing with Kansas too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and I know Mark Stoops already got kind of pissy with Calipari because, he said basically like it's a basketball school, and Stoops like fired back. And it's like, no, dude, you coach at a basketball school. You're never going to have the same resources. You're never going to have the same support. It's just like people like Kentucky football, but it's, it's like Nebraska football in Kentucky is the basketball team, so like maybe if you really made a hard run at Stoops, maybe you could get him. That's like my dream candidate is Mark Stoops.
If I was Mark Stoops, though, I wouldn't walk away from that dream contract. What did you say it was? If he gets 7 wins, he gets a 1-year re-extension, or he gets an extension or something? I remember we talked about this.
I'm not sure on that one.
I think there's something where if he wins like a certain amount of games, he gets an extension. I'm gonna have to look this up, but
he's gonna be in line for a big payday anyway. Because they're unbeaten in the top 10, and they won 10 games last year.
Yeah, and they made the Citrus Bowl, and so right now he is among the highest paid coaches. So I don't know. There's stability, and there's a good contract that Mark Stoops has, and I don't see him leaving it. I really don't see him leaving it because Kentucky wants stability for their program, and I think Stoops is a good fit, and he did well with Wan'Dale Robinson. So I don't really see him leaving a good situation to kind of inherit a rebuilding project.
Yeah, we'll see. It's going to. I think it would take a lot of money, and the thing is that guy could recruit. He'd recruit Ohio. He would fix the defense, and I just think he would have a lot of. I think he'd have Nebraska as the class of the Big Ten West. Before USC shows up, because USC is going to be a freaking juggernaut. Let's just.
Yeah.
You're going to have like basically what I see the Big Ten. Is Ohio State's going to be loaded. Michigan's going to be really good as long as Jim Harbaugh's there. And I think Penn State's going to be really good as long as Franklin's around, and then USC. I think those are the four big time programs. And then I think Michigan State, Wisconsin are kind of. I think we can be in that next group. I think that's where Nebraska should be, but cracking that top four once USC joins, I think is going to be pretty tough.
And recruiting with Lincoln Riley opposing you is going to be pretty tough. He's a damn good recruiter, and I don't know. I mean, Nebraska, that's the other thing too. Nebraska needs to get this right because they can fall even further to the point where there's no return with USC coming in. So, I don't know. This is going to be a big hire in many respects, moving forward. So, they need to get this one right. Trev Alberts, for his sake, needs to get this one right. And, if we end up, I'll just say this. If we end up with Bill O'Brien, that's the only hire where I'm really going to be upset. All the others that I've heard so far, I would be okay with.
So here's the thing is I've already thought about this scenario where I am going to be pissed off if they hire Bill O'Brien. But the thing is like within 2 or 3 days, I'll be sitting here talking about why it's a great hire because, it's like,
because we need content. That's why. Because we need content. I'll be messaging you.
I'm just an internal optimist. No matter what, I'll flip it around. I'll be if they beat Indiana, I'll have myself slightly convinced that they can get to a bowl game. And win the Big Ten West. That's just how I am.
I mean, and there's no fault in that. But I mean, honestly, I think if Bill O'Brien is hired, you can be the ray of sunshine on this side of the podcast, and I'll just be miserable.
I think, it's like I said, I think Bill O'Brien will win more games. I just don't think I don't think he's gonna be a dynamic recruiter, and I just worry that. But maybe not. Maybe like the NFL's like, screw, we don't want your shit anymore, Bill O'Brien.
Win more games than what? Scott Frost, the 3 he's won in the past 2 years. That's a really high bar over here.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know. Like, I hope he would.
Well, yeah, he'd have to. I mean, unless they are cursed. I don't know. But I do think like he could. No, I mean, I feel like he would do similar to what he did at Penn State. But like he won 15 games in 2 years, which I mean, it was good. It was better than what they had. But it's not like he won a Big Ten championship at Penn State or something,
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if the NFL would be sick of his shit because just look at Josh McDaniels. He got another head coaching job and he's 0-3 again. So hopefully he comes back to New England. But that's a separate issue. But I'm just saying, I think the NFL is big on second chances.
He can come back. He can come back to New England and then call the plays, but not be called the offensive coordinator.
I know that's so ridiculous. I'm not looking forward to the matchup with your Packers this Sunday. I'll tell you that right now. But at least we don't have Aaron Rodgers. Because I like Aaron Rodgers, the football player, but I just don't like his personality. I really don't.
Yeah, he's a douche. I mean, he makes it kind of hard to cheer for him sometimes,
Your receivers are good, though. Romeo Doubs and, Christian Watson. And I really like Doubs. I wish we took him, but, such is life.
Yeah, such is life. I wish, yeah. Why that's like with Christian Watson. Why isn't that guy at Nebraska? You know what I mean? Like you got to find guys like that.
Yeah, he was North Dakota State, wasn't he?
Yeah. And his testing at the combine was like Julio Jones type. He's like the best athlete since Julio Jones. So it's like, why is that guy playing FCS football? He should be at Nebraska. I don't know.
Well, just think about it. Just the 3 players I can name off the top of my head: Trey Lance, Carson Wentz, Christian Watson. I mean, that's a pretty solid list for an FCS program.
Yeah, it's North. See, we're thinking about all these other programs, and it's North Dakota State that's taking all of our players. But really, though, I mean, I feel like they should be in the freaking Big Ten or at least the Big 12.
Yeah, no, but I mean, why would they want to leave? It's like Notre Dame. Like, why would they want to join a conference? They get their own television network, all these, all this big money, and I mean. I don't think Notre Dame cares. I think they just care about, winning, getting easy bowl games, and then getting blown out when it matters.
See, to me, it's so weird to not play in a conference because, like, Nebraska always grew, the Big 8 championship always meant something to me, and the Big 10 championship would mean something if Nebraska could ever win one. Like, that's I don't really think about, I know people talk about it, but it's like, to me, and this is where college football has kind of fallen off, where it used to be like you won your, if you played in the Big Eight, you wanted to win the Big Eight and go to the Orange Bowl. If you played in the Big Ten, you wanted to win that and go to the Rose Bowl. And if you like won the Rose Bowl or the Orange Bowl, you were happy. And then if you got voted number one, it was like, but the national championship wasn't like the end all be all goal for every team, at least. And now now like Ohio State won the Rose Bowl last year and they don't even give a shit. They're like, that was a failed season. So, it's so different than it used to be.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I wonder what the old computer BCS rankings would churn out for these seasons. But it was, and this is a whole nother video for another day, but as flawed as the BCS was, I feel like it would have given more opportunities than we're seeing with the current college football playoff system. Granted, it will expand, but I'm not sure that will honestly improve the competition. Other teams might obviously make it in, but I still think the big dog, so to speak, will reign supreme.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to change. What I like about it is that so when you get to 12 teams instead of, a bunch of like old coaches or whoever the hell sitting in this room figuring out who the top 4 teams are, all they have to do is figure out the top 12, and we're actually going to find out. Last year Ohio State was probably still one of the 4 best teams. Now, I get why they weren't included in that playoff because they lost, but if you had an actual 12-team playoff, they would have made the semifinals. Like they would have. There's no way and I'm sorry, Cincinnati, but there's no way that Cincinnati would have made it. Like maybe they would have. I just don't think they were the 4th best team last year. Now, they based off everything else that happened, but like I think Utah probably would have beat them. I know Ohio State would have beat them, and I'm trying to think who else was kind of out there. Baylor. I think Baylor. So, really, I think Cincinnati last year was probably like the 8th or 9th best team, and they got a chance. So, to me, instead of us seeing like, it could have been maybe Michigan might not have made it either, but you could have had like Michigan and Georgia on one side, and then Alabama against Ohio State or Utah, somebody that had like a legitimate chance to beat them.
Honestly, shout out to Utah because they've been incredibly consistent, and Kyle Whittingham has run a very good program over there. But I'll be interested to see how this affects recruiting and the 12-team playoff, and where college football goes from here. But right now, I think Nebraska just needs to focus on wins, and we can worry about the college football playoff later.
Yeah, one win this week against Indiana. So we'll at that point we'll start to transition here to the end of the show, since we're past 7 o'clock Mountain Time, past 9 o'clock your time. We're trying to keep it about 2 an hour, but we're
already over.
But
we're already over an hour. But
so we got some great talk in here. So remember, folks, to like our videos, comment, let us know. We'll definitely, get and interact with fellow Nebraska fans. That's why we do this. And subscribe to the channel and look out. We'll have a preview and predictions post coming up on Indiana either Thursday or Friday. And you can always check out all of our written content as well. HuskerBigRed.com for me, Danny at thegreatcornholio.org. So we're going to have a ton of content there. Follow us on Twitter. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.